today we are actually talking about funding your home care agency. So now before we get started, I definitely want to say these are suggestions. I'm not giving anyone advice. Really what I want, the whole goal of today is, this is a question that I get quite often. And also, I just want to make sure that you pursue what options, you research what options kind of are meaningful to you and see what best works for you and your business. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of start the presentation off with that. But so definitely we're going to explore different ways to fund your non-medical home care agency. And then honestly, understanding what your options are, that's the key to launching and sustaining your business. So this is essential because funding will help you cover startup costs such as licensing, office setup, marketing. It ensures financial stability during the initial growth phase. And that is so important because, you don't want to have competing interests, because really as the owner, your main business is going to be promoting and growing your business. And so you really want to have that peace of mind, that funding piece taken care of, so you can focus on that main thing. Okay. And then it helps with recruiting your caregivers, training, payroll, all of those necessary expenses will be handled once you have your funding situated. And as we've already said, it allows for scaling and business expansion. So let's talk about some options, and we are actually going to go through all of them today. So personal savings, bank loans, SBA loans and grants, private investors, crowdfunding, business credit lines, grants and nonprofit assistance, and then revenue-based funding. Okay, so like I said, we're going to touch on all of these as we move forward. Okay, personal savings. Let's start with probably the lowest risk. All right. So using your own funds to start your business. And listen, I can already hear people saying, listen, I just do not have the money. All of the money that I do have is utilized to help me continue living, continue paying for my place to stay, your bills, current commitments, right? So I completely understand that. If you do have savings, or if you have an opportunity to kind of tuck some money away, I certainly suggest that this is something, or at least a portion of what it's going to take to get you started. Start with that personal savings. The pros to this, there's no debt. Okay, you have full ownership unless you are starting with someone else, right? And then you have that immediate access to those funds. So you're not waiting on an approval process. You're not waiting for those funds to come down. It's just you tapping into your savings. And then the cons is high personal financial risk. So what does that mean? That means, there's a slight chance that you would not get that money back. But we don't think like that. So we would, of course, be getting our money back, right? And this option is best for entrepreneurs that do have savings who want to avoid loans. Okay. Let's talk about bank loans. So these specifically that we're referencing here are the traditional loans from your financial institutions. Now, these do require good credit, and sometimes they want collateral, and then, of course, a solid business plan. And we've talked about that a lot over the last week and a half. So the pros to this is you have access to larger amounts of capital, right? And then the cons are interest payments. The approval process can be lengthy, but this is a great option for business owners with strong credit and assets. Let's move over to SBA loans and grants. So SBA is the Small Business Association. These are loans and grants offered with government-backed funding. Okay, so the SBA 7A and microloans are popular options. So the pros to working with your SBA is, number one, they have lower interest rates. So because this is backed by the government, and because these are specific to small businesses, they can offer the lower interest rate. And then they also have the favorable terms that most lenders are looking for. Okay, now the cons, strict eligibility requirements. They want to make sure that They are actually lending and working with an actual business. And so that means that they're going to be paperwork intensive. They want you to not only say it, they want you to show it. Okay. And this is best for new businesses that meet Small Business Association criteria. Now, I've talked about this before. I don't remember the video, but I loved the Small Business Association in the city I used to live in was so active. They had so many workshops, different tools for new businesses, and for smaller businesses. And so if you have not, I definitely suggest you get involved. Even if you don't go for a loan, definitely get involved in your small business association that's near you. Okay. Private investors. So this is not something that we talk about a lot, but there are angel investors or venture capital firms that provide funding in exchange for equity. Okay. Now, I will say this some of you may be thinking, I really don't want to give up ownership of my business. This is not something I'm willing to do. I can understand that side. But then there's another side of that to say, if I can get funding and someone believes in my vision, to help me grow and scale my business, then it might be worth some of the percentage, some of the equity. Okay. Again, that's a conversation you would have to have with yourself and anyone else that's involved in your business. So the pros here, and these are big pros, large capital infusions, right? Think of a Shark Tank, right? These investors are infusing large sums of money into your business, but not only the money, the business mentorship. I know when I first started my business, I really could have used a mentor. So a lot of times with these investors and these venture capital firms, yes, they kind of want to be silent, but they also want to make sure that their investment is in good hands. Okay. So what are the cons? This is definitely why some of you don't want to give up some of your equity. There's loss of business control because it's not just you now, right? There's other voices that have to be considered in key decisions. And it's best for high growth potential businesses. Okay. Let's talk about crowdfunding. Hi, Shalita. How are you? Thank you for joining. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining. And Solange says, good morning. When would you recommend resigning a 9-to-5 and creating an LLC to prevent any possible conflicts of interest? Once the application is submitted or once the application is approved? Okay, that's a great question. So I'm going to stop the press because actually, Solange, I think you asked that I saw as I was exiting yesterday's call that there was a question. So I will just share my experience really quickly. So for me, I was working. There was no conflict because I was working in the tech space, which had nothing to do with home care. So I will be honest, because I knew I was using a lot of cash, I was still working so I can save as I was working. So I was putting away funds every couple of weeks. And I want to say I would say a year before I left, I knew I was leaving. But what I was doing was I had put together my timeline. I was putting together my application packet. I think I shared with you that I had to do a business plan for my husband in order for him to sign off on us doing the business. So even that took a couple of months. So I really took my time in putting together the research into what I needed to do in order to submit that resignation. Okay. So I put that business plan together. I was actually approved at the time that I resigned. I had already submitted my application and I found out. So I remember it was kind of late. It was November or December that I was approved, and I think I resigned in January. Okay. So that was for me. Okay. But like I said, I had time to think about it. I had a plan. I had already done my business plan. I had already got my application materials together. And then I was approved before I resigned. So Solange, I hope my experience helped you, but I would say that my I guess my advice is put together your own plan of what that's going to look like. Okay. Now I do have agency owners who are actually operating their agency and still working a full-time job. Okay. And it can't, here's the thing. If you're willing to do it, you can do anything. I'm a firm believer of that. If you're willing to do it, you can do anything. For me, I feel like anytime you have multiple focuses, it takes away from the main thing. And so if your main thing is going to be this agency, you got to put 110% into it. Okay? So I really hope that answered it. And thank you so much for that question, Solange. So crowdfunding is raising funds from a large number of small contributors. So think Kickstarter, GoFundMe. Okay. And I've seen a lot, especially lately. I think we all kind of make assumptions on like a GoFundMe. Like when you think of GoFundMe, oh, this is a person who needs help. A tragedy has happened and they need help to cover that tragedy. Not always. GoFundMes are set up for projects. They're set up for businesses. They're set up for people who just, hey, I would like to do this, but I'm just short on the funds. So really look into these Kickstarters, GoFundMes, like look into that to see if that's something you can do. So the pros, again, no debt, right? And then it builds that community support. Think of the people who are investing in you or just kind of giving you that money. There's no strings attached. They're deciding to, pitch in, if you will. That's building a community that's going to support you in this process. The cons are it does require strong marketing efforts. Okay. And then there's no guaranteed success. That doesn't, just because even with strong marketing efforts doesn't mean that somebody's going to invest in you. Okay. But this is best for businesses with a compelling story or social impact. And I will say, just speaking from a lot of you have compelling stories. What is the reason you got started? What is your why? If your why is compelling, you might want to consider this. Okay. I know I have contributed to GoFundMes in my past, and I did like to see what the updates. I did like to see what's happening now, right? So never underestimate the power of community. Okay. Let's talk about business credit lines. So this is a flexible credit option similar to a credit card. Okay. The pros of this is the funds are available when needed. And then the interest is only on borrowed amounts, because sometimes they'll give you, let's say they give you a credit line of 50,000. You may not need the entire 50, right? So you're only being charged on what you actually utilize. The cons, it's high interest. You're paying a high interest rate, okay? And it does require good credit. So this is best for businesses needing flexible short-term funding. Okay? Let's talk about grants and nonprofit assistance. Anytime you can get a grant, I love it because you don't have to pay that money back. Okay? Something that I wanted to talk about too here really quickly, I forgot to put it as a bullet point, but I wanted to share, like for me, everybody has their skills, everybody has where they flourish and where they do a good job. I am not a good grant writer. I'm the first to say that. Don't forget, there are people that you can hire to write these grants for you. Okay, so you're giving them information, you're giving the information for them to create these grant, well, not create the grant opportunity, but to fulfill the grant opportunity on your behalf. Okay. So this is funding from government agencies, nonprofits, or industry organizations. So the pros, I've already talked about it. There's no repayment. Okay. The cons, it's competitive. And I think that's why initially it's something I kind of turned away from, but I really wish I didn't because it's competitive, but that doesn't mean you won't get them, so you gotta get you gotta compete in order to potentially win, right? And then there's limited availability. So this is best for minority owned, women owned, or mission driven businesses. Because the people that are putting up these grants, they're doing it to support these communities. Okay. Revenue based funding. Now, when I put this together, I was like, okay, is this, what is this, right? So, revenue based funding is funding based on a percentage of future revenue. Okay, so what are the pros in this? There's no fixed repayment schedule. This aligns with how your business performs. Now, the cons are there are higher long-term costs. So this is best for established businesses with stable revenue. So think Lending Tree. Okay, and there were a couple of other that I looked up, but I think Lending Tree was the most popular that I had heard of when I Googled this. Okay. So think Lending Tree, and also think, because if you look at the fourth bullet there, best for established businesses. So maybe this is after you're already had a successful launch, you have revenue coming in. Maybe you want to open a second site, right? Maybe you want to expand your services. This might be a good option for you. Okay. So choosing the right funding option, you certainly have to access your financial situation and your risk tolerance. Determine how much funding you need, and you'll know that number. You'll have at least a good estimate from your business plan. And then you want to explore multiple funding sources. Explore them all. Okay? That's the only way you're going to decide what's best for you, is by you exploring all of them. Okay? So, a strong funding plan ensures your home care agency's success. Start researching funding opportunities today. Okay? And then if you need some help securing funding, join my home care community for expert resources and guidance. And one thing that I want to say, by joining the community, you're really in company with people who are in the process of starting their business. Maybe they haven't started already, but you can get some of that real world advice. Really, some of that mentorship that I wish I had when I initially started. Okay. Let me go back to the chat. Solange said, yes, thank you. You are so welcome. Listen, you all, it has been so fun doing these presentations. Joining from Florida. Finally caught one of your live streams. Very grateful for all of your valuable information. Oh, you are most welcome. You are most welcome. I actually really, really enjoyed doing this. For tomorrow, for day 9, we're talking about understanding those regulations, those home care industry regulations. So I hope to see you all tomorrow for day 9, and I hope you all have a blessed day. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Stay blessed.